Welcome to the AA Podcast, our little corner of the web where we are not afraid to discuss tough questions like,
when did nutrition, health, movement, and stress management become alternative medicine?
Where we embrace challenges in all aspects of life to become healthier and stronger versions of ourselves.
And where food and movement are the best kinds of medicine, and cooking meals at home is a revolutionary act. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the AA Podcast. We are officially starting our season 3, which is just insane to think about.
Crazy.
Um, if you haven't already, go back to last week's episode because we celebrated not only our end of our second year, but we also celebrated our 100th episode anniversary. So it was a big week. But we are kicking off season 3 with maybe a little different
Yeah.
tone. But before we get into all of that, we are always going to share our weekly Bible verse, and mine is coming from Micah 6:8, and it says, "He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God."
And Ashley put a little Easter egg in her verse. I was not that clever. Mine is coming from Psalm 33:11. But the plans of the Lord stand firm forever, the purposes of his heart through all generations. And in case you did not catch that, Ashley's verse said, "Oh man." And we are switching gears a little bit here.
Oh
And
man, oh man, oh man.
oh man. So we're gonna talk about the men in our lives, and yeah, this is a little bit of a departure. I think a lot of the things that we talk about are cross gender lines for sure, but yeah, we just decided that we've got enough men in our audience, but we also have a lot of women who listen who have men in their lives who are impacted. I mean, I've been married for, gosh, we're going on 27 years here, and are we 20? No, we're 27 years this year. And Ashley, how long have you been married?
16.
16. Yeah. So we've both hit that age where people are starting to applaud because we've been together for so long. So yeah, it impacts, you know, your partner's health impacts you. And that's
Yep.
just the bottom line, whether it's men or whether it's women. Yeah, your partner's health impacts your quality of life as well. So yeah, we just thought we would take kind of a deep dive. This is going to be a 2 episode journey into men's health. And we've kind of titled it Why Men Need Muscle and Meaning. So
Which
yeah,
could probably go on for another 10 episodes.
it probably could. It probably could.
Hmm.
So, yeah. So, actually, I just wanted to begin with talking about men and healthcare, their healthcare in general. And I can speak pretty candidly about my man. He does not go and get healthcare. He does not go and get medical care unless I provide it or I force him. So,
I was
what?
literally gonna say,
Yeah.
what healthcare?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I know, and it's I think there's a lot of women in this boat too, so I don't want to completely put this baggage on the men alone, but the fact is I feel like women's health has kind of bubbled to the surface as of late, and women are starting to take better care of themselves, right? They're starting to go in and get screenings and medical care and regular care. And
Mhm.
so I don't find, like, in my own practice, I don't find that men come in as often or as regularly as they should, so that we can make sure that something bad isn't brewing, or so we can optimize their health and they can feel the best that they can. And that's really what these
Mhm.
episodes are about, is just you can feel really good in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond. Like, there's no reason for you to be sick and declining.
Yeah. I was talking about this, we were talking more in the context of female and women, but, like, um there's this connotation, it shifted since I was a young kid, and I'm sure you too, but, like, it was almost like once you hit 40, it was just like, "Alright, enjoy the coast down," and it's
Yeah.
like and that's not the case anymore because people are realizing, "No, wait a minute, I might be living for another 40, 50 years,
Mhm.
and I definitely don't wanna be on a roller coaster going down the whole
Right.
time.
Right.
So, how can I make sure I'm feeling good? Where can I optimize some of my health? If I haven't focused on it in my 20s and 30s, then what can I do in my 40s, 50s, 60s,
Yep.
and beyond? And we've talked about it at length in multiple episodes that it's never too late to start.
Exactly.
And there is a point that you can feel good whether you're male or female. Like you
Right.
do not have to deal with these typical, quote unquote,
Ailments.
normal
Yeah.
ailments that
Mhm.
typically people talk about as they age. And I think we're going to get into it, but a lot of the times it is a mindset too,
Mhm.
that if you just have this mindset that, oh, I'm 40, things are just starting to break, well, then they probably will.
Right.
But
Right.
if you take it as like, okay, there's things that I can do to prevent and to optimize my health to prevent some of these injuries and things that quote unquote are normal as you age. I think that just puts you into a better age bracket of success.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also for our men who are in their 30s and 40s and maybe even 20s, I don't know. But we wanted to talk about those things that you can do. It's kind of like financial health. Start
Hmm.
early. All of these things are going to create better and longer lasting change if you start early. So we want to also talk about like what men wish that they had started a decade earlier. I can speak to that. We can talk about those things that should be started no matter how old you are. Start now. That's kind of the message with this. We're going to talk about using muscle as medicine. We're going to talk about evidence for the relationship between relationships and social connections and longevity. We're also going to talk about the big T in the room. So the testosterone. Now that seems to be the only answer in our social zeitgeist right now. So is just, go to a men's clinic, get on testosterone. That will cure everything that ails you. And that's really the only solution that we are throwing at men, it seems, these days.
Hmm.
So yeah, let's just get into it. I wanted to start with some metabolic principles for men in their 30s to 40s. But if you are older than that, these apply to you too. Now, should you have started a decade ago? All of us should have,
Yep.
always. But you can
Yep.
always stop what you're doing and start now. So, in terms of risk clusters, I wanted to talk a little bit about what are we looking at that portends poor health later on. So these are things like if you are in your 30s and 40s and you have what we lovingly call visceral adiposity, or truncal adiposity. This is that fat layer that is around your middle that women have such a hard time with when our hormones start going crazy in peri and
Hmm.
menopause. That truncal region begins to put on fat layers, and this is fat that is hanging around your organs, and this is not the kind that you want. So for men, this typically starts earlier than it does for women. So we see this with, even if someone was like, really athletic in college and then they get out, they get into their lives, they start, maybe start a family, start their work career, and they don't move like they used to.
Yeah.
And so we can start to see that those fat deposits start to gather around the middle section. And that is really hard on a body long term.
Hmm.
You couple that with blood pressure creep. Now we talked about blood pressure and kind of the misnomers in forcing blood pressure down. And if you haven't listened to that episode, go back. I think that was one of the most interesting that we've done in a while. Just with regards to kind of myth busting in the health
Yeah,
realms. But
agreed.
what I'm talking about here is that creep. So if your blood pressure, if you started out in your, 110s over upper 70s, and now a decade and a half later, you're sitting at 130, we probably need to do something about that. So that combined with visceral adiposity. And then also, I want to keep track of blood glucose levels. All right. So
Yeah.
rising A1C, blood sugar levels, and let's see. Let's just talk about actually let's talk about A1C. I want to mention some labs that I typically get on men annually, and we'll get there in a second. But so we talked visceral adiposity, blood pressure creep, rising blood glucose levels, also sleep debt. Okay. This is huge. This is huge. As a culture, we have very poor sleep. And
Mhm.
we seem to think, especially in our younger years, those young adult years, you just kind of think, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? I've got little kids, or I've got work pressures, or, maybe we're consuming a lot of alcohol at night and sleep is just crappy. So we get into these areas of sleep debt, and that is an incredible stress on the body. And then finally, just overall stress levels. Our lives are really stressful and we don't take a lot of downtime. Men don't have a lot of outlets these days for stress busting and stress response. Um,
Mhm.
Now, your man is engaging in some stress busting this weekend, right now. And
Yes.
so that's why you are a hunting widow this weekend.
Yes.
But yeah, there's not, I think that's a kind of unique gift these days, for men to get out and get into the woods and just like take a deep breath.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, uh, our culture has shifted so much in the last 60 years of what, you know, used to be a typical working world,
Right.
and so much of it was, 60s. I would even say probably 40 years ago,
Mhm.
we as a culture were way more naturally active,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
probably there's studies out there that show, like, once the internet came about, computers came about, that our natural, neat, non-exercise activity thermogenesis was
Mhm.
tanked. Like, we were constantly just
Right.
sitting, and now our jobs are primarily sitting jobs, and
Yeah.
we just are not as active, and we, like you said, you don't just get outside, like,
Yeah.
kids even. I mean, that's a whole 'nother
Ugh.
animal of, like,
Yeah.
kids need to be outside, they need to be exploring and with the dirt in their hands, and, especially
Yeah.
little boys.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, so that's a really good point about just sedentary lifestyles, because there's so much stress that builds up when you've got this, let's say you've got, oh my gosh, a 28-year-old male. There's a lot of energy that needs to be expended in and for women too. All right, this episode is about men, but a lot of this stuff cross pollinates. Okay, so
Mhm.
you've got this energy that builds up and there's no outlet for it, and so
Right.
then you can end up with if you have exercised your mind all day but not your body, then you can't sleep. You cannot
Mhm.
sleep. So your mind might be incredibly fatigued, and from that your mind says, Oh my gosh, I don't have anything left to go to the gym. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You have so much kinetic energy that needs to be exercised out of you. But your brain is exhausted from the activities that you've done all day, right? So you
Mm,
need to then get commensurate levels of activity for your physical body too.
yeah. Mhm.
So, from a functional standpoint, um, there are some labs that we can run to kind of see where your baseline level of health is, and so I wanted to talk about some of these that are really impactful and can kind of show us levels of health or lack of. And the first one is kind of around this idea of blood sugar. Okay. So there are several labs that I will get, three in particular. I'm talking fasting insulin, fasting glucose, and then A1C. And a couple of episodes that talked about this glucose connection were the episodes we did with Josh and his cholesterol book. Do you remember? And
Yes.
he talked pretty extensively about the impact of managing your blood sugar levels. And so that those are a good couple of episodes to go and listen back to if you want to deeper dive
Mhm.
into this. But keeping blood sugar under control is absolutely critical for your ongoing health. So that fasting glucose, that's a value that I get. However, it's a part of a normal CMP, that's a comprehensive metabolic panel. It's a cheap test. Insurance will pay for it every single year because it's cheap. Um, and in the context, like taken by itself, a fasting blood glucose really doesn't tell me anything. Okay. So if it's elevated, I want to know if it's elevated in the context of a fasting insulin and an A1C. And here's why. Because when you go in, let's say you fasted from 10 p.m. the night before as instructed, you show up at 8 a.m., you get your blood panel done, and then your blood sugar comes back elevated. Let's say that it's like, you know, 97. Well, yeah, that is elevated. I'd really rather see it down in the 80s, low 80s. But were you really stressed out? Is your cortisol very high because maybe you hate needles? Maybe you're really scared about getting this blood panel done. And maybe maybe there was a student that needed practice sticking, getting needle sticks, and you got stuck 6 times before they actually got your blood drawn. So that in and of itself can raise your blood glucose. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So that number doesn't necessarily say that you've got this waking elevated blood sugar. Um, however,
So
I
how
will
would
take
you
that number.
Okay.
And
So how
yeah,
would
and
you wanna get a more accurate reading?
you can't. You can't.
Okay.
You have to look at it in context. So if I see somebody in the low 80s, like, hey, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. However, if it's elevated, then I need to do a little more digging to see if that's a
Okay.
true elevation. So then I go to the fasting insulin levels. Now, you want those below 10. Almost nobody is below 10 because we do not have optimized insulin levels. We have so much sugar in our bloodstream that our insulin is constantly cranking. So I want to look at that fasting insulin. Josh talked about that value as well. And then I also want to look at A1C. Now, let's talk about hemoglobin A1C. I've explained this before, but I think it bears repeating. Hemoglobin A1C is really a marker of the last 3 to 4 months of blood sugar level. All right. So, red blood cells. So, the reason it's called a hemoglobin A1C is because we look at red blood cells under a microscope. And red blood cells only last about 120 days in the system. Okay. So, they last 120 days, they circulate, they do their thing, they carry oxygen. Um, and then they die and they are recycled by the spleen. So, as a red blood cell circulates, the longer it's been alive, the more glucose it collects on the surface of the red blood cell. So they become studded, almost think of a red blood cell like a tire, and then think of having studs on your tire, like snow tires. So they become studded with glucose molecules. And the degree to which they are studded will give us an A1C number. And the higher that number is, that means the more covered they are in glucose. And so there is a calculated average that gets spit out, and this is called the A1C. All right. So that tells us an average blood sugar level over the last 3 to 4 months. Okay. So
Hmm.
that's pretty cool. That
Yeah.
I can see if your A1C is way high, that means kind of that we can extrapolate that your blood glucose has been too high on average.
Huh.
Okay. Now, what we can't tell is it constantly high? Or let's say that your A1C actually looks pretty good. What I can't tell, maybe you've had an extreme high and an extreme low, an extreme high and extreme low, and your blood glucose is bouncing all over the place and you might be really sick. But the average actually looks pretty good. Does that make
Hmm.
sense? So
Mhm.
that's why even the A1C isn't useful by itself. We've got to have these other numbers with it. Okay.
Hmm.
So that's the blood sugar connection. And honestly, exercise is one of the best things. Movement is one of the best things that you can do to mobilize blood sugar and make your body really efficient at dealing with blood glucose. Okay. Now, the next thing are lipids, and I will look at lipids or cholesterol.
Mhm.
It's not as important as maybe somebody outside of a functional space would say. I want to look at family history. I want to look at I want to look at certain values. We may, if you're 40, that I recommend you get a CAC to
Mhm.
see if there is any plaquing in your arteries. Like, what's that cholesterol doing? What's the personality of the cholesterol? Is it a good guy or is it a bad guy in your
Yeah.
system? Okay. But a lipid panel is kind of where we start with that. And if you're sky high, then yeah, you bet I want to get a CAC and I want to see like what's going
What's
on here.
actually going on?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there's something called a CRP. This is a C-reactive protein. This is a proxy measure for an inflammatory cytokine called interleukin 6. All right. So if your CRP is elevated over time, that means that you have a level of inflammation in your body, and we need to deal with it because we know that inflammation is kind of the bottom floor of all of these chronic disease states. Okay.
Mm.
So inflammation is not something that we want chronically elevated in our body. We have to have some level of inflammation. We have to be able to launch an inflammatory response because if we can't, we'll die. So
Mhm.
inflammation is important. It's not always a bad guy, but if it's chronically high, then we need to deal with that.
Yeah.
Now let's I want to get into a little bit of the hormone situation. Okay. We'll talk about this in depth later on and also in the next episode. But testosterone, okay, we need your total testosterone amounts. And then we also need what's called the free testosterone. Okay. So testosterone as a hormone is highly bound by this globular protein that runs around in the blood. It's called sex hormone binding globulin. All right? So it
Okay.
binds the sex hormone testosterone in the blood. And when testosterone is bound, it can't do what it's supposed to do. All right? It kind of takes that testosterone molecule out of commission. So it's important that we know the total, but we also have to know the free. Because
Yeah.
if we let's say that you have massively high levels of sex hormone binding globulin, you could be producing lots of testosterone, but if your SHBG is high, then it is binding lots of it. So we have to know what's left over to actually have the androgenic activity in your body. Okay.
Okay.
So I measure total testosterone, free testosterone, and sex hormone binding globulin. Okay. And that impacts thyroid as well. I like to check thyroid panels too, because um, particularly in women, but increasingly so for men, men are having thyroid issues, just like women are now.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Mhm.
it's a problem, and sex hormone binding globulin does impact thyroid to a degree as well. So there's a connection there too. Um, Now, finally, I want to check a vitamin D, because low vitamin D levels are also linked to low testosterone. So,
Mm.
so many people are walking around, so many men are walking around, they don't get any sunlight, right? They have office jobs, they're sitting on their butts, and then they're exhausted when they get home. And you know what, 5 6 months out of the year, by the time they get out of work, it's dark.
Mhm.
And where's the opportunity for sunlight? Men don't typically go out and walk at
Mhm.
lunch, right? That's
Right.
I feel like that's more, women do that because we, are a little more community minded creatures, and so we'll go out with buddies and we'll walk during a lunch break.
Mm.
It's
We're
rare that you find
also
a
calorie burn
Yeah, consciousness,
queens.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So men aren't getting enough sunlight, and their vitamin D levels are suppressed, okay?
Yep.
So,
So you're not getting enough exercise, you're not getting
yep.
enough sun.
Yeah, I mean and you're stressed to the hilt, and
Yep.
yeah, it all ends up in a really inflamed body that feels like crap.
Yeah.
So So the lifestyle pillars really for men in their 30s and 40s, and also beyond, but men, if you're in your 30s and 40s, start here. Sleep,
Yeah.
protein, resistance training, sun, get fiber. I need you pooping every single day. Every single day you must poop. And also alcohol moderation, cannot stress that enough.
Mhm.
I've seen some posts lately that we are becoming kind of an alcohol free society. Like, there are lots of people making that choice that, well, I feel really crummy when I drink, and so I sleep really crummy when I drink, and so maybe I need to cut back on this. So,
Mhm. It's a
I
fascinating phenomenon.
mhm. Yeah, I think that's a step in a positive direction, truly.
Yeah.
Um, all right,
As long as you're
so
not
Ashley,
substituting it with something else.
well, yes, as long as you're not like, "Huh, I think maybe I'll take up vaping." It's gotta have something. Yeah, so don't replace it
Mm.
with anything bad, replace it with some exercise, and that will help you out. So Ashley, I wanted you to talk to this, the muscle building. Let's talk about the importance of muscle building in those decades, and
Mm.
kind of banking your strength and power for your 50s and 60s. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that?
Yeah. I mean, if you're listening to this as a female and you're like, "Man, this sounds like other episodes that I've been listening to."
Yeah.
You're not wrong, because
Right.
literally the pillars that she just said, I just kinda giggled to myself because it's literally the same pillars that females need to be, uh,
Yeah.
getting after as well. So,
Yeah.
no, like, we've talked about it at length, in other episodes, but the prime building uh, decade is in your 20s.
Mhm.
I mean, teens and then 20s, to build as much lean muscle mass as possible. So
Yeah.
if you're a teen and you're in a resistance training program, you are leaps and bounds ahead of most of
Mhm.
my generation, because
Yeah.
it just wasn't something
Mine
that was a
too.
part. You know,
Yeah.
we were outside playing, but we weren't doing any
Mhm.
type of resistance training.
Yeah.
And so, if you're listening to this and somebody maybe afforded forward this episode to you as a male, and you're listening and you're in your 20s or maybe even early 30s, and you're not resistance training now, I highly encourage you to get
Mhm.
after it right away because you are in prime optimization to build that
Cool,
lean
yeah,
muscle mass.
yeah.
And so obviously, we're always talking about how it's never too late to start, but it just gets a lot harder as you
Mhm,
get into those, mid to late 30s and now obviously into your 40s
mhm.
to put on that lean muscle mass. So, um, again, it's never too late. You're just going to have to work at it a little bit harder.
Yeah.
And there's so many studies on just the importance and the positive impact that lean muscle mass on a skeletal lean muscle mass has on longevity.
Mhm.
And I don't think I don't think if you can put on as much lean muscle mass as possible, I don't think that there's any negatives to that. Like
No.
it's almost if you're naturally putting it on
Right,
especially,
right.
you are doing yourself such a big favor.
Yeah, you don't need performance enhancing substances for this.
No.
This is just depend upon the good graces of your God-given physiology and you will build
Yeah.
plenty of lean muscle. Um
Mhm.
yeah, resistance training, can you speak to I can just hear it now, a lot of men out there like, where am I supposed to fit that in? I'm working 1, maybe
Mhm.
2 jobs. I've got a family. I've got, all these pressures and responsibility. Maybe I've got school. Maybe I've got, I'm trying to make my way up the ladder at work, so I can provide more for myself or for my family. What kind of time commitment can this be done in? Like, can we?
I mean, I tell people anything is better than nothing.
Yep.
And if you
Mhm.
have even 15 minutes in the morning to rock out some
Yes.
body weight resistance trainings, things,
Yes.
air squats, push ups, anything that,
Mhm.
gets some resistance on the body, the skeletal
Yep.
yeah, skeleton, then you're doing yourself a favor. I mean, is
Yeah.
it the best thing? Okay, no, but it's better than nothing. I would
Yeah.
rather see you doing some push-ups and air squats than just going down and having your cup of coffee and scrolling Instagram.
Right.
So again, you don't have to are you gonna have are you gonna have a bodybuilder physique? No.
No.
But you are doing yourself some favors of having some resistance training. So
Right.
and then on top of that, say you're getting really good at, doing 10, 15 minutes of something in the morning and you're realizing, oh, I feel really good. I bet I could wake up another 10 minutes early and get 20 or 30 minutes in. Then you can bust out a quick, little weighted workout, like with
Circuit.
some,
Yeah.
yeah, do a
Mhm.
little circuit. And again, something is better than nothing. And I would say that
Yeah.
for our women too, that are busy moms, like you are doing yourself massive favors if you can just do something.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wanted to interject the principle of constantly constantly challenging and recalibrating your workouts, all right? So
Mm,
if you start with, let's say you start with 10 push-ups and 50 air squats, and that's all you can do before you get out the door, and that's fine. Start there.
mhm.
But if you do that day after day after day and you never go heavier, you never increase the resistance, you never that's not the way to do this. You don't have to
Yep.
increase the time expenditure,
Yeah.
but do ratchet up the resistance. Allow your body to get stronger.
Mhm.
Because
So we had a whole episode on it and we probably need to redo it. But the whole uh, principle of progressive overload.
yes.
So the only way that you can really grow lean muscle mass is one, enough protein,
Uh-huh.
enough sleep, but
Yep.
then also you have to practice progressive overload. And so what that simply is over time, what Andrea just said, how are you re-challenging the body. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean you need to switch up your workouts or routine, but if you are keeping to a squat, air squat, and push up,
Mhm.
then you either need to increase your reps or now you need to start adding in some extra resistance with either bands or some weights.
Weights.
And so
Mhm.
obviously
Mhm.
we're going to be a huge proponent of adding weights because there's just
Mhm.
so much evidence of how good that is for us.
Yeah.
But again, if you are new or you're just very um, timid in getting started, you are
Yeah.
going to naturally you have your baseline, say it's the 50 squats, 10 push-ups, that's your
Mhm.
baseline. Do that for a hot second, and then if that starts becoming relatively doable, it's time
Mhm.
to,
Yeah.
pick up
You you
pick up
you
a little bit
should
more
be
resistance.
you should be challenged. You should
Yes.
be challenged. The yeah.
And I think, men are better at this than women, and that's why I'm so passionate about helping women understand this, but, you know, the other thing that men need to realize is, yeah, if you're in your 30s and 40s, especially late
Mhm.
30s and 40s, I'm sorry, but you probably shouldn't go back to your high school weight
Oh,
workouts
yeah,
and do
please
those
don't do that.
workouts with those weights. You're gonna
Mhm.
hurt yourself, so
Yep.
swallow the little
Yeah.
pride pill
Yeah.
and start off at a baseline, get a baseline.
Mhm.
Don't be embarrassed if your workout is 50 squats and 10 push-ups. That is like, again, that's better than
It's
nothing.
fine. Yep.
It's fine. But then I think men are better at
Slowly
this, like I
increase.
said, than men.
Mhm.
But you're going to need to step it up. Like,
Yeah.
again, the time commitment can be the same, but the effort needs to be more.
Yes. Yes, that's right. Don't get into your routine and think that that's good enough. A routine is dynamic.
Hmm.
You need to have some dynamics in your workout. So, yeah,
Yep.
so some of the studies link resistance training. When we say resistance training, we're talking about weight bearing activity, right? It's not just
Yep.
walking, it's not running, it's not aerobic, it's not steady state activity. It is
Hmm.
resistance training. You are moving weight from one place to another. So,
You're putting
resistance
strain.
training, yes.
M
Mhm.
Weighted
You're
strain on the body.
yes, absolutely. So, that type of training is linked to lower all-cause mortality, lower risk of cardiovascular disease, and lower risk of cancer mortality. That is dying by cancer. Okay, so there are anywhere from 10 to 17% risk reductions across all outcomes. So I know 10 to 17% doesn't seem that much, but this particular study was looking all across the board, even people doing barely anything. Okay, so
I mean, you said
that's
that and I was like,
huge.
"Oh, that's pretty big."
I
I mean,
think it
I'd
is
take 10 to
too.
17%.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, I it is absolutely significant, but sometimes, if it's not like 80 or 90%, people are like
True.
yawn.
Yeah.
But there was a meta-analysis that showed again that any resistance training, any led to 15% lower all-cause mortality. And there was a nonlinear dose response, which means that, you can get responses with just almost nothing, but then you've got to progressively increase the load, right? Just like we were talking about. Also, it's a good idea to check your grip strength, okay? So if you've got access to a gym, you can very easily test your grip strength. You can pick up weights like plates, right? You can pick
Yep.
up a 45-pound plate, see how long you can carry that with a pincher grip, right?
That's funny
Also,
you said that because this month in my small group training,
you're
we are doing plate walks with a
Oh, I
pinch grip.
love it. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah. So see how long you can carry that. And also doing hanging, like hanging off of
Yes.
a bar. And if you aren't hanging for very long, grip strength is a proxy for whole body function. And so this inversely tracks with all cause mortality. So grip strength or lack of is related to death by all causes. All right.
Mhm.
So you want to
Yeah,
make sure, and not just working on grip strength. That's not what this is about. It's just that if your grip strength is poor, the rest of your body is also probably in poor shape.
exactly, and we were talking about this, with my women, but, they were like, "Man, my I can do farmer carry with the kettlebell, but
Mm,
that
yep.
plate grip is so
Yep.
much harder," and so we were just talking about, like, yeah, it works different,
Yeah.
different grips, but, yeah, there's a actually, Dr. Peter Attia, he
Mm,
has a suggestion for both men and women. But so for women, he wants to see that she can carry 75% of her weight for at least a minute. And then
mhm.
for a healthy man, it's his full weight for a minute.
Yeah. So get on a
So
scale,
that if
see
that's
what
not
you weigh.
encouragement to get lean muscle mass, I don't know what
Yeah, for
is.
sure. So you don't have to carry so much. But yeah, let's say we've got a 180-pound guy. You get two 90-pound
Dumbbells.
dumbbells and make sure that you can walk around with that for a minute.
Yep.
That's really the baseline of where you need to be. So
I
that's
did this
something.
test a couple months ago, and
Oh,
I got to a little over a minute, but man, I was like, "I don't know if I'm gonna make it."
yeah. Yeah, no, it's, I will do we've got a long driveway, so I will carry, like, one-arm carries up and down the driveway, and yeah, it's hard.
Yeah,
Um,
it's awesome.
alright, so let's just toss out some basics of programming,
Yeah.
like 3 days a week, does that sound alright?
Yeah, I tell anybody that 3 days is more the perfect amount to be able
Mhm,
to build lean muscle mass. Honestly, 3 to 4 days is all you need. You do
mhm,
not need to be in the gym 7 days a week. I actually don't want you
mhm,
in
yeah,
the gym 7 days
absolutely.
a week, because you're not gonna be able to give your body enough recovery, especially if
Mhm,
you are practicing progressive overload. But yeah,
mhm,
whenever I'm programming a 3-day split, I'm looking at full body typically because you're gonna be able to hit multiple muscle groups,
mhm,
every single day. And then we're always looking at a hinge, squat, push, pull, carry,
yep,
exercise split.
yep,
So, if we're hinging, we're doing some type of deadlift. If we're squatting, obviously we're squatting. Pushing can be shoulder press, can be even leg press. It
mhm,
can be bench press, obviously.
mhm,
Pull, doing any type of rack pull, obviously with a barbell, any type of
mhm,
dumbbell row, cable
mhm.
row. You can even do
Are some deadlifts in
some,
there?
yeah, deadlifts are obviously, yeah, I
Mhm.
did the hinge.
A hinge, right,
Hinge, I
right, right,
said,
right. Yeah.
yeah, deadlift.
Mhm.
But yeah, you can, deadlifts would be a pull and a hinge,
Okay.
um, combo.
And
And
probably a
then,
carry
uh,
too for
yeah, I
that
said,
grip strength. Yeah.
yeah, I said carry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna shut up and let you, expound on your area of expertise.
Oh, you're fine. I mean, you made the list, but I've said it. But no, carry obviously carries. We just had a whole
Mhm.
conversation about why carries
Yep.
are important.
Yep.
But if you're deadlifting, if you're pulling, you're obviously challenging that grip strength as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're using any type of straps for getting, so this is what I tell my ladies as well, and this applies to men, is you can probably row like a dumbbell row
Mm,
more than your grip strength is going to be capable
mm,
of. So if you are using wrist straps, just make sure that you have a separate
mm.
exercise in your programming that actually does challenge your grip strength. So,
Yeah, I like that.
maybe in your beginning warm up sets you're not using the wrist straps for the rows or the deadlifts, but then if you're going for, max effort and trying to
Mhm.
really push that, for those bigger muscle groups, because your legs are
Mhm.
going to be able to do way more than your grip can.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
times, if you're, I mean, obviously, you're a power lifter, that goes into, that's a nuance, but um, But anyway, you can do a lot more with your bigger muscle groups than a lot of times you can with your grip, especially if that's something that you are struggling with to begin with. And,
Mhm.
it doesn't need to be anything fancy. Like,
Yep.
don't feel like if you don't have the perfect program that it's not going to do you any good. Again,
Mhm.
something is better than nothing. You
Yep.
can find plethora of resources on the web.
Mhm.
Um, you know, there there are YouTube videos galore of full-on
Mhm.
programs that you can follow. There are YouTubes of, like, perfectly timed out 15, 20, 30-minute exercise routines that you can
Yeah.
follow. You can even go on ChatGPT. I know we hate to love it, but it does
Yeah.
have some good in it.
Oh, yeah.
And you can literally say, "I have 25 minutes. How do I optimize my weight training regimen for a, you know,
Yeah.
if you're only got 20, 25 minutes to do, then I would say you can push those 6, 7 day workouts. And because you're not going to be totally fatigued. But so if you have like 25 minutes of weight training that you can do a day, you probably do need to do maybe 5 or 6 days a week. But
Yeah,
again,
but even to start with 3, if somebody is just
exactly.
beginning, just do it. Don't let the overwhelm, paralyze.
Right. Yeah. So to have it
Yeah.
shoot you out a 3-day, 25 minutes
Mhm.
workout split and start there. And then
Yeah.
as maybe your time allotment doesn't expand, but your effort can expand
Mhm.
in the sense of, okay, 3 days was now doable. Now you can do four, or maybe you
Yeah.
can do five, and then you can hit multiple muscle groups. Um, a little bit more to failure, or at least a higher effort load
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
those days. But again, don't be scared to just have 2 to 3 days that you start with,
Mhm.
because again, I can't stress this enough, something is better than nothing.
Yes, absolutely. And then I just wanted to hit protein really quick. If you're
Yes.
because you have to support the muscle that you're building. You
Yep.
cannot build a house without a brick, right? So you've
Right.
got to have the muscle building protein. So roughly 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. All right. So if you are a 250-pound dude and you should be 190 pounds, then 190 pounds is what your goal is. That is 190 grams of protein per day. All right. So you can
Yep.
anchor this with having 30 to 40 grams per meal with some protein rich snacks in between. Those can be protein shakes. I like protein shakes. I like whey in particular. You want leucine rich sources. Um,
Mhm.
I wrote an article a while ago about animal protein sources versus plant protein sources. If you want to reach out to us and read that article about what are the best protein sources for you, we'd be happy to send that article to you. So reach out to the
Yes.
show and will you can learn about leucine. It's a quick read. But you want to also, if you're not used to eating all that protein, you want to move up slowly. So if you're just
Yes.
starting out, oh my gosh, you are in for some serious digestive upset if you start at 190 grams. Your body will rebel and you will curse us. So please start
Yeah.
slowly. And work up. I usually have people go like 5 to 10 gram per day increases over the course of a week. So if you're
Yep.
used to 50 grams of protein a day, go to 60 for the next week,
Yep.
go to 70
Mhm.
for the week after that. It's going to take you a while, but believe me, your digestive function will come along and you will feel much better. um
Absolutely.
Also, maybe 3 to 5 rounds of sprint or hit, doing some conditioning. If your joints, if your VO2, like if your respiratory system will permit, then do that. But honestly, sprint or hit training, if you can just get a couple of rounds in of that a day, uh, do that. It takes you less than 1 minute. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we've talked about this. Creatine. We love
Yes.
creatine. Put creatine in a drink, take some capsules, just whatever you do, get some creatine in. That's great for recovery. Don't chase soreness. If you are sore every single day, something is wrong. So
Yes.
don't chase that soreness, chase consistency.
Love
Did I say it
that.
right?
I love it.
Did I
Yes.
say it right? Trainer
You
friend? Yeah.
did.
Okay.
Yes. No.
Very good.
Something I stress all the time is you should
Mhm.
not be in a constant state of soreness.
Yeah.
The first couple of weeks of anything, you're going to be sore, but if that continues, then those are some red flags.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
All right,
Well, this was
let's
awesome. I think obviously our men are going to benefit from this,
mhm.
but women, if you're listening to this,
Yeah.
this can be exactly, just copy paste
Yeah,
for you. These are some
yeah,
things that you guys can look at as well. So,
yeah.
thanks so much for breaking this down. In our next episode,
Mhm.
we are going to, or,
We're gonna
wait,
get
is that
into
it?
testosterone. Yeah, with our next
Oh, okay.
episode, we are going to talk about testosterone. And actually, Ashley, this might end up being a three-part series because there's just a lot to cover with our
I
guys. So
know.
on the next episode, we are going to specifically talk about testosterone. We're going to answer probably all your questions about testosterone. So stay tuned.
Awesome. Well, if this episode or any of the other episodes that you have listened to have been a help to you, or maybe you listened and you're like, ooh, this person really needs to listen to this one, it
Mhm.
is our biggest source of compliment if you forward this on to them. And of course, as always, subscribing and making sure that you're always attuned and downloading the latest episode is also very helpful for the silly little algorithm that's out there.
Mhm.
So other people can find these episodes and get some help as well. So, um, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Bye. The content provided in the AA podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The podcast is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The information and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute medical advice.